Hi everyone. One of the fundamental teachings of Buddhism, which serves as the foundation for the path to liberation, is the Four Noble Truths in the Noble Eightfold Path. In the last two videos, we explored the profound meaning of these teachings, timeless truths that the Buddha expounded more than 2,500 years ago. Despite the passage of time and the changes in human history, these teachings remain deeply relevant and practical to this day. The application of the Four Noble Truths in the Noble Eightfold Path is not limited to the monastic practices of monks and nuns. Instead, it carries a far-reaching and profound significance, directly impacting every individual in all circumstances, regardless of the era in which they live. Suffering is a reality that everyone must face in this life. But what truly matters is how we understand, transform, and overcome it. Today's video will help you realize that the Four Noble Truths in the Noble Eightfold Path are not distant ideals but a guiding compass that can be applied naturally, simply, and skillfully into your daily life. Through this, you can gradually transform the suffering within yourself, spread peace and happiness to those around you, and bring about genuine harmony and joy for your family and society. But first, to help you recall and better understand, let us revisit the Four Noble Truths, the truths of life. 1. The truth of suffering, dukkha. Life is filled with suffering. Birth brings suffering. Aging brings suffering. Illness and death bring suffering. We suffer when we are separated from those we love, when we must endure those we dislike, and when we desire something but cannot obtain it. 2. The origin of suffering, samadaya. Suffering arises from craving and attachment, our clinging to impermanent things such as wealth, fame, relationships, and even life itself. 3. The cessation of suffering, nirodha. Suffering can be brought to an end. When we let go of craving and attachment, suffering ceases, and a state of peace and liberation arises in our minds. 4. The path to the end of suffering, magga. The way to overcome suffering is through the Noble Eightfold Path, 8 principles leading to enlightenment and true happiness. The Noble Eightfold Path, the path to transforming suffering. 1. Right view, understanding suffering, impermanence, and selflessness. 2. Right thought, cultivating wholesome thoughts and letting go of greed, anger, and delusion. 3. Right speech, speaking truthfully, kindly, and harmoniously. 4. Right action, acting virtuously, avoiding harm to others and all living beings. 5. Right livelihood, earning a living through honest and ethical means that cause no harm. 6. Right effort, making an effort to do good, abandon unwholesome actions, and nurture positive qualities. 7. Right mindfulness, remaining aware and present in every thought, word, and action. 8. Right concentration, calming the mind through meditation to achieve clarity, peace, and insight. Dear friends, the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path serve as a map to help us cross the vast ocean of suffering in life. Today, through concrete and living examples, you will witness the power of the Dharma in transforming suffering and rediscovering peace within your own heart. Let us begin overcoming suffering, loss, and karma through Buddhism, a healing journey inspired by Patakara's story. Part 1. A happy life in the beginning of tragedy. Long ago, in the city of Savatthi, there lived a beautiful young woman named Patacara, the beloved daughter of one of the wealthiest families in the city. Her parents cherished her deeply and arranged for her to marry a man of equal social status. However, Patakara's heart belonged to a poor servant in her household. Unable to live without him, she fled with him to a distant rural village. Together, they led a humble but loving life, far removed from the comforts of her past. Patakara believed happiness had smiled upon her, unaware that tragedy was about to strike. Part 2. Losing her husband and children in the storm. When Patakara was pregnant with their first child, life grew increasingly difficult. As the time of her delivery neared, she pleaded with her husband to take her back to her parents' home for care and support. But on their way, in the middle of a barren field, she suddenly went into labor. Her husband built a small shelter with whatever he could find to shield her from the elements. Amidst great pain, Patacara gave birth to her first child. The sight of her newborn brought tears of relief and joy to her eyes. Despite the hardship of their lives, time passed, and Patacara became pregnant again. This time, she insisted on returning to her parents before giving birth. Yet fate had other plans. On their journey home, a violent storm erupted, winds howled, rain poured mercilessly, and lightning tore across the sky. Her husband hurried off to find materials to build a shelter for his wife and child. Tragedy struck. He was bitten by a poisonous snake and died alone at the edge of the forest. Patacara, waiting helplessly in the storm, had no idea her husband would never return. The next morning, she found his lifeless body. She cried in anguish, but there was no time to grieve. In the midst of the storm, she went into labor again, giving birth to her second child while consumed by isolation and despair. Holding her 2 children close, she began her journey home, carrying the weight of her sorrow. Part 3. The climax of tragedy, losing everything in a moment. On the way, Patacara encountered a raging river swollen from the storm. Desperate to cross, she placed her newborn on a small mound of earth and instructed her elder child to stay still. Step by step, she waded into the turbulent water. As she reached the middle of the river, a giant eagle swooped down, seizing her infant and flying away. Patacara screamed in horror, but her cries were drowned by the roar of the water. Turning back, she watched helplessly as her elder child, terrified and unsteady, slipped into the current and was swept away. Collapsing in the river, Patacara screamed, "Why has everything left me? Why am I so utterly alone?" Part 4. The final blow, total despair. Grief-stricken and numb, Patacara stumbled back to her family home, desperate for comfort. But as she neared the city, a villager approached her and delivered the final blow. "The storm yesterday destroyed your parents' home. They're all gone. No one survived." The words struck her like lightning. Patacara fell to the ground, her hair disheveled, her tears mingling with the rain-soaked earth. In her despair, she wandered aimlessly through the streets, murmuring, "Where is my husband? Where are my children? My parents? Why has everyone abandoned me?" Her appearance became wild and tattered, and people viewed her as a madwoman. Part 5. Meeting the Buddha, letting go of suffering. Word spread of a woman consumed by grief, wandering the streets like a ghost. One day, Patacara found herself near the Jetavana monastery, where the Buddha was teaching. When she approached the crowd, people recoiled in disgust, shunning her presence. Yet the Buddha, with infinite compassion, said gently, "Let her come to me. She is not mad. She is carrying the unbearable weight of suffering." Hearing these words, Patacara looked up. The Buddha's calm gaze and soothing voice penetrated the depths of her despair. The Buddha spoke to her. "Patacara, you weep for what you have lost. Yet understand this. The tears you have shed in all your lifetimes are greater than the water in the oceans. Suffering is inevitable. Everything in life is impermanent. Let go of your sorrow, my child." The Buddha then explained the 4 noble truths in simple words. 1. Suffering. Life is full of suffering, birth, aging, sickness, and death. We suffer when we lose loved ones, when we face those we dislike, and when we cannot have what we desire. 2. The cause of suffering. Suffering arises from attachment and craving for things that are impermanent: wealth, love, status, people, and even life itself. 3. The end of suffering. We can end suffering by letting go of our attachment and accepting impermanence. 4. The path to liberation. The way to overcome suffering is by following the Noble Eightfold Path, living righteously, thinking kindly, and keeping the mind calm and clear. Patacara, if you wish to escape the sea of suffering and find true peace, you must walk the path of the Noble Eightfold Path. This is the path that will help you end suffering and attain enlightenment. 1. Right view. Seeing things as they truly are. Understand that life is suffering. Everything is impermanent, and what is born will eventually cease. See the true nature of suffering and let go of clinging to things that cannot be held forever. 2. Right thought, thinking in a wholesome and pure way. Abandon greed, hatred, and resentment. Train your mind to think kind, virtuous thoughts that lead to peace and liberation. 3. Right speech, speaking truthfully. Avoid lies, harsh words, divisive speech, and idle chatter. Speak words of comfort, kindness, and love to ease the suffering of yourself and others. 4. Right action, acting righteously. Do not kill, steal, or harm others. Live a virtuous life and sow good deeds to transform the negative karma of the past. 5. Right livelihood, earning a living in a righteous way. Support yourself with honest work that causes no harm to living beings and is not driven by greed or ambition. 6. Right effort, making the right effort. Persevere in letting go of unwholesome habits and nurturing wholesome qualities of the mind. Be diligent in practicing the path to free yourself from the net of suffering. 7. Right mindfulness, being aware in each moment. Be conscious of your thoughts, actions, and feelings. Do not dwell in the past or worry about the future. Instead, live fully in the present moment. 8. Right concentration, achieving a calm and focused mind. Practice meditation to still the mind, like water becoming smooth and clear. In this stillness, you will see the truth and attain the wisdom that leads to liberation. The Buddha concluded, Patacara, suffering is a part of life, but you can free yourself from it. Let go of your grief. Follow the path I have shown, and you will find peace. For the first time, Patacara cried, not in madness, but in understanding. She realized that life is impermanent, that suffering is inevitable, and that clinging only brings more pain. From that moment, Patacara chose to follow the Buddha. She became a nun and practiced mindfulness and meditation under his guidance. Through her dedication, she attained enlightenment, becoming an arahant, free from all suffering and full of true peace. Message deliver. Patacara's story is a powerful lesson in letting go and transforming suffering. A life is full of pain and loss, but it is how we face and transform our suffering that determines our peace and happiness. But by practicing mindfulness, accepting impermanence, and following the Buddha's path, we too can find the strength to let go of our pain and discover true liberation. Final thought, suffering is real, but you do not need to carry it forever. Let go, embrace impermanence, and find the peace that lies within, just as Patacara did. The story of Patacara has shown us that suffering in this life often arises from loss, separation, and attachment. Yet, through the teachings of the Buddha, Patacara learned to let go of her grief, understand the impermanent nature of life, and rediscover peace within herself. However, suffering does not only come from broken relationships or the pain of losing loved ones. There are deeper, more silent sufferings rooted in our bodies and minds, sufferings that arise from karmic consequences of past actions. These can manifest as illnesses or conditions that seem impossible to cure, leaving people feeling trapped in despair. But even such suffering can be transformed if we learn to practice the Noble Path and follow the teachings of the Buddha. Today, I will tell you the story of Dhanapala, a young man who suffered from epilepsy, a mysterious illness that no physician could heal. Through meeting the Buddha, understanding the roots of his karmic suffering, and diligently practicing the Dharma, Dhanapala overcame his pain, transformed his karma into blessings, and rediscovered peace and purpose. Let's dive in. The story of Dhanapala, overcoming epilepsy caused by karma. Part 1. The young man with epilepsy. Long ago, when the Buddha was residing at Jetavana Monastery, there lived a poor family in the city of Savatthi. They had a son named Dhanapala, who suffered from severe epilepsy since childhood. His illness caused him to have frequent seizures. His body would convulse uncontrollably. Foam would gather at his mouth, and he would lose consciousness. The villagers were terrified of his condition. They whispered, "He is possessed by evil spirits," and began to shun and isolate him. Wherever Dhanapala went, people avoided him, leaving him to feel like a burden. This humiliation and rejection weighed heavily on him. filling his heart with sorrow and despair. One day, in their desperation, Dhanapala's parents heard that the Buddha was teaching at the monastery nearby. Hoping for a miracle, they brought their son to meet the Blessed One, seeking guidance and a cure. Part 2. Meeting the Buddha. As Dhanapala approached the monastery, a seizure suddenly overtook him. He fell to the ground, his body convulsing violently, foam dripping from his mouth. The people nearby were horrified. "Take him away. Do not defile this sacred place," they shouted. But the Buddha, full of infinite compassion, spoke gently. "Let him be. He is not here to disrupt, but to find healing for his suffering." When Dhanapala's seizure subsided, his parents helped him kneel before the Buddha. With tears in their eyes, they pleaded, "Blessed One, our son has been tormented by this illness since birth. Why must he suffer like this? Can it ever be healed?" The Buddha gazed at Dhanapala with kindness and replied, "This illness is not without cause. It is the result of karma from past lives. But even karma can be transformed. Listen, and I will tell you of his past deeds." Part 3. The Karma of a Past Life. The Buddha then recounted Dhanapala's previous life. In a distant past, Dhanapala was a young cowherd. One day, as he wandered through the fields, he saw a snake sleeping by the roadside. Out of curiosity and mischief, he struck the snake with a stick, beating it until it writhed in agony and died. Before its death, the snake harbored deep resentment, and from this act, Dhanapala created karma that followed him into future lives. Because of his unwholesome action, he has been reborn many times suffering from epilepsy. Such is the nature of karma. Our actions, whether good or bad, return to us. Upon hearing this, Dhanapala and his parents were overwhelmed with grief. His mother cried, "Is there no hope, Blessed One? Can my son's suffering be healed?" The Buddha's voice was calm and steady as he replied, "The fruits of past karma cannot be erased, but they can be transformed. Just as salt can dissolve in a large body of water, so too can unwholesome karma be diluted through acts of virtue, mindfulness, and right effort." Part 4. The Path to Healing. Under the Buddha's guidance, Dhanapala began his journey to transform his suffering and heal his mind and body. Repentance and acts of kindness. Each day, Dhanapala knelt before the Buddha and sincerely repented for his past misdeeds. He vowed never again to harm any living being. He and his parents began to practice compassion by releasing captured animals, saving them from harm. These acts of kindness were dedicated to alleviating his suffering and transforming his karma. Practicing mindfulness and meditation. The Buddha taught Dhanapala the practice of breathing meditation to calm his mind. Breathe in. Know that you are breathing in. Breathe out. Send loving kindness to all beings. With patience, he learned to observe his thoughts and physical sensations without fear. When seizures began, instead of panicking, he focused his mind on his breathing, allowing his body to relax. Gradually, the seizures became less severe and less frequent. Right action and noble effort. Dhanapala devoted himself to helping others. He cared for the sick, assisted the elderly, and showed compassion to those who were suffering. Through these noble actions, he began to create positive karma that outweighed the negative. Letting go of resentment. The Buddha encouraged Dhanapala to release anger, shame, and self-pity. Do not resent your suffering, for it is through suffering that we grow in wisdom and compassion. Accept it, transform it, and you will find peace. Dhanapala replaced his feelings of despair with gratitude for the opportunity to learn and change. Part 5. Liberation and Healing. Over time, through his diligent practice and unwavering faith, Dhanapala's seizures disappeared completely. His face, once marked by despair, now radiated peace and joy. He no longer lived in fear, but embraced life with gratitude and understanding. One day, Dhanapala knelt before the Buddha and said, "Blessed One, I have found peace within my suffering. I now understand that karma is not a punishment but a teacher, and through right action and mindfulness, I have transformed my life." The Buddha smiled and replied, "Well done, Dhanapala. Suffering arises from our actions, But freedom comes when we choose the path of virtue, mindfulness, and wisdom. You have turned poison into medicine and found liberation through your own effort. May your life be an example to others. From that day forward, Dhanapala became a devoted follower of the Buddha, sharing his story to inspire others to face their suffering with courage, compassion, and understanding. Message for the modern world. Dhanapala's story reminds us that 1. Illness and suffering may arise from past actions, but we are not powerless. Through mindfulness, compassion, and right effort, we can transform our lives. 2. Karma is not a punishment but an opportunity to learn and grow. By sowing seeds of kindness and virtue, we can heal ourselves and others. 3. Acceptance and non-resentment are the first steps toward healing. When we stop resisting our suffering and instead transform it, we find peace. Final thought. No matter how difficult or mysterious our suffering may seem, the path to healing lies within us. Like Dhanapala, we can choose compassion, mindfulness, and right action to transform our pain into peace. Dear friends, the teachings of the Buddha are profound and hold immense practical value, applicable to people from all walks of life and in any situation. However, in this age of decline of the Dharma, where people are so consumed by the demands and distractions of daily life, the wisdom of the Buddha seems to have been forgotten or overlooked. The stories from the time of the Buddha, such as those of Patacara and Dhanapala, have shown us the roots of suffering and the path to liberation through the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. Yet, if we stop here, it may not fully encompass the timeless relevance and practical depth of these teachings, especially when it comes to addressing the unique struggles of the modern world. Rather than focusing on ordinary, everyday stories, let us turn our attention to the profound teachings of renowned Zen masters, enlightened individuals who embodied the Buddha's wisdom and applied it masterfully to transcend suffering. These stories serve as timeless mirrors, enabling us to reflect deeply and discover a path of transformation that resonates with our own personal circumstances. And now, I invite you to listen to the story of Zen Master Bankei, a great teacher whose wisdom about the natural mind and the art of letting go of afflictions guides us back to the peace that already exists within us all. The story of Zen Master Bankei, the natural light and the untroubled mind. Introduction to Zen Master Bankei. Zen Master Bankei Yotaku, 1622–1693, was a renowned Japanese Zen master of the Edo period, known for his profound yet simple teachings. Bankei emphasized the importance of returning to one's unborn mind, a natural, pure state of awareness that is free from attachments and delusions. His wisdom resonated with people of all walks of life, making his teachings timeless and practical for those seeking peace amidst the struggles of everyday life. Now, let us explore one of his most famous teachings, a lesson about letting go of troubles and recognizing the mind's natural clarity. Part 1. The Disciple's Struggle. Once, in a quiet monastery surrounded by mountains and forests, Zen Master Bankei was teaching his students. His reputation as a great teacher had spread far and wide, and people came from all over to seek his guidance. One day, a young man from a distant village arrived at the temple. He was weighed down by worries, anxieties, and inner turmoil. Bowing deeply before Master Bankei, the young man said, "Master, I have tried so hard, but I cannot free myself from the thoughts and troubles in my mind. No matter how long I meditate, my mind remains restless, like a stormy lake. How can I overcome these thoughts and find peace?" Master Bankei smiled gently and said, "Sit down for a moment and look around this temple. What do you see?" The young man looked up, confused. He saw the sunlight streaming softly through the window, illuminating the dust particles drifting in the air. "I see sunlight coming through the window, Master." Bankei nodded, his voice calm and steady. "Yes, that sunlight shines naturally. It does not struggle to shine, nor does it choose where to shine. It simply is." Part 2. The mind is like the sun. Zen Master Bankei continued, "Your troubled mind is like clouds drifting across the sky. Thoughts and worries are the clouds, and your true nature, your original mind, is like the clear sky or the sunlight. The clouds come and go on their own, but the sky remains unchanged. You don't need to chase the clouds away, nor do you need to cling to them. Just let them be, and they will pass. In the same way, your mind is naturally pure and clear. It is only when you focus too much on the passing clouds, your worries, thoughts, and anxieties, that you lose sight of the vast, clear sky. The young man was struck by these words. After a moment, he asked, "Master, do I need to do something to keep my mind clear?" Bankei smiled warmly and replied, "You don't need to do anything special. Simply be aware. Observe your thoughts like clouds passing across the sky, knowing that your mind, like the sun, shines naturally behind them. When you realize this, the clouds of trouble will no longer disturb you." Part 3. Realizing the natural mind. From that day on, the young disciple began to practice as Master Bankei had instructed. When troubling thoughts or emotions arose, he no longer fought them or tried to push them away. Instead, he simply observed them, letting them come and go like clouds drifting through the sky. Over time, the disciple's mind became calm and serene, free from the storms of anxiety and worry. He discovered that his thoughts had no power over him unless he clung to them. His mind, like the sun, remained bright and untroubled. One day, he returned to Master Bankei and bowed deeply. "Master, your teaching has freed me. I now see that my mind is like the clear sky. Troubles come and go, but they cannot disturb the natural peace within me. I am truly grateful." Master Bankei smiled, his eyes shining with kindness. "Good. You have understood. Live with this awareness, natural, clear, and free. That is true freedom." The lesson, letting go of troubles. Zen Master Bankei's story teaches us a profound truth. Our thoughts and troubles are like clouds in the sky. They come and go naturally. But the mind's true nature is clear, calm, and radiant, like sunlight shining behind the clouds. By simply observing our thoughts without clinging to or resisting them, we can discover the peace and clarity that already exists within us. Applying the teaching in modern life. In today's fast-paced and stressful world, we are often overwhelmed by worries, anxieties, and negative thoughts. However, the lesson of Master Bankei is as relevant now as it was centuries ago. Recognize that your mind's true nature is clear and peaceful. Observe your thoughts without judgment or attachment, and know that troubles, like clouds, will pass on their own if you allow them to. When you understand this, you will no longer be controlled by your worries. Instead, you will experience a sense of freedom, calm, and clarity, like the sun shining effortlessly in the sky. Zen Master Bankei's wisdom reminds us that peace is not something we need to chase or create. It is already within us. By letting go of attachments to our thoughts and emotions, we can return to our natural, untroubled state of mind and find true liberation. Let us reflect on this teaching and apply it to our own lives, so we, too, can live with clarity, freedom, and joy. Dear friends, through the 3 inspiring stories we have just heard, from the time of the Buddha with Patacara and Dhanapala, to the profound teachings of Zen Master Bankei, they all share one timeless message. Suffering is inevitable in this life, but how we face, reflect upon, and transform that suffering determines our happiness and peace. The teachings of the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path are not reserved solely for monks or those in retreat, but serve as a guiding compass for each of us to overcome life's challenges. Whether you are facing loss, illness, or the pressures of modern society, always remember, understand the nature of suffering, dukkha, the first noble truth. Recognize and let go of its root causes, samadaya and nirodha, the second and third noble truths, and walk the Noble Eightfold Path, keeping your mind calm and clear. Life is like the vast sky. Difficulties and worries are only passing clouds. As we return to our natural mind, like the sunlight that Zen Master Bankei described, we will discover true peace, freedom, and happiness within ourselves. Dear friends, though these stories may conclude, the lessons and applications of the Buddha's teachings remain open before us. May each of you find the light of the Dharma within your hearts and apply it to your lives. transforming suffering and spreading peace to your families, communities, and all of society. If today's stories have brought value and meaning to you, please like, share, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss future videos. Your support is a tremendous encouragement that helps us continue to share the Buddhist teachings and these messages of peace with even more people. Thank you so much for your attention and support. May you always be peaceful and happy. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha.